He was a single father drowning in his own grief, with nothing to offer but a truck, a small apartment, and a heart that had learned the hard way what it meant to be abandoned. She was barely 18, holding her twin boys as the wealthy family who had promised her everything stripped away, her name, her home, and her future in one brutal afternoon. What happened when their broken worlds collided wasn't written in any plan, but sometimes the most beautiful families are born from the deepest pain. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Texas heat wasn't just uncomfortable that Tuesday afternoon. It was the kind of vicious, soul-crushing temperature that made decent people lose their minds and cruel people become monsters. The kind that turned parking lots into furnaces and made charity feel impossible. The kind of day when the worst in humanity came crawling out to play. Nathan Rivers had no idea he was about to walk straight into hell, disguised as a community meeting. He pulled his rusted Chevy into the parking lot of Magnolia Community Center, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the truck's struggling air conditioner. All he wanted was to grab some donated furniture, a kitchen table, maybe a lamp, anything to make his empty apartment feel less like a tomb. 2 years after Sarah's death, he was still living like a ghost, haunting his own life. But something was wrong the moment he stepped out of the truck. Too many expensive cars, way too many for this part of town. Gleaming BMWs and Mercedes parked next to beat-up Hondas like predators circling prey. And the people walking into the building weren't the usual community center crowd. These were people in designer clothes who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Nathan's gut twisted. In his experience, when rich people showed up somewhere they didn't belong, somebody was about to get hurt. The community center's glass doors revealed the nightmare inside, a makeshift courtroom complete with a podium, formal seating, and what looked like an execution in progress. Nathan pushed through the doors, and the Arctic blast of air conditioning hit him like a slap, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. At the front of the room stood a girl who looked like she'd been carved out of pure heartbreak. She, who couldn't have been more than 18, thin as a reed, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and shattered dreams. Her hair hung limp around her shoulders, and her cheap sundress was wrinkled like she'd been sitting in a car for hours. But none of that mattered because of what she held in her arms. 2 babies. Identical twin boys, maybe 6 months old, with fat cheeks and enormous dark eyes that seemed to take in everything. They were unnaturally quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when babies learn early that crying doesn't bring comfort. The girl clutched them like they were the only things keeping her anchored to earth, which Nathan realized with a sick feeling. They probably were. Behind a polished podium stood 3 people who looked like they'd stepped off the pages of a luxury magazine. The woman in the center wore more diamonds than most people saw in a lifetime. Her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon that probably cost more than Nathan's monthly rent. The 2 men flanking her looked like expensive lawyers, the kind who specialized in making problems disappear. The crowd was a mixture of uncomfortable locals and smug suburbanites, all watching this girl like she was in a fascinating car accident. They couldn't look away from. Nathan felt bile rise in his throat. He'd seen public humiliation before, but never dressed up as a formal proceeding. The diamond-draped woman stepped to the microphone, her voice cutting through the room like a blade through silk. "Good afternoon, I am Victoria Ashworth, acting as spokesperson for the Ashworth family estate." She paused, letting her name sink in. Even Nathan recognized it. The Ashworths owned half the commercial real estate in the county. Old money, the kind of family that thought they owned people too. "We are gathered here today," Victoria continued, her voice dripping with false formality, "to address the unfortunate situation involving Isabella Martinez and the illegitimate Offspring she claims belong to our family. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. The way she said illegitimate offspring made it sound like Isabella was holding contaminated waste instead of two innocent babies. Isabella didn't respond, didn't defend herself, didn't cry, didn't even blink. She just stood there like a statue, carved from suffering, her arms tightening protectively around her sons. After careful consideration, Victoria announced, her voice growing sharper with each word, "The Ashworth family hereby formally and permanently severs all ties with Miss Martinez. Any previous promises, arrangements, or expectations are null and void. Effective immediately, she is no longer welcome in our homes, our businesses, or our lives." The room erupted in whispers. Some people looked shocked, others nodded approvingly, like they'd been waiting for this moment. A few pulled out phones to record what was clearly meant to be a public spectacle. But Nathan couldn't look away from Isabella. She stood there absorbing each word like physical blows, her jaw set in a way that reminded him of his wife during those final terrible doctor visits. That look of someone who'd stopped expecting mercy from the world. Furthermore, Victoria's voice rose above the murmur. Any claims to inheritance, family name, or ongoing financial support are categorically denied. Miss Martinez made her choices. Today she faces the consequences. That's when Nathan saw the slight tremor in Isabella's hands, the way her knees threatened to buckle. She was holding it together through sheer force of will, but she was breaking. Right there in front of a room full of strangers, this girl was coming apart at the seams, and not one person was moving to help her. Nathan had been that person once, standing alone while everyone else found reasons to look away. He'd held Sarah's hand during those final weeks when visitors stopped coming and phone calls grew shorter. He knew what it felt like to be abandoned by people who'd once claimed to care, but this was worse. This was deliberate cruelty, packaged as justice and served with a side of public humiliation. Something hot and furious ignited in Nathan's chest. He'd spent 2 years feeling nothing but grief and emptiness. But watching this girl, this kid with 2 babies and nowhere to go, face down a room full of people who seemed to enjoy her suffering, brought every protective instinct roaring back to life. He started walking before he even realized he'd made a decision. His work boots made soft sounds against the industrial carpet, but in the hushed room, they might as well have been thunder. Conversations died mid-sentence, heads turned. Someone whispered, "Who the hell is that?" Nathan didn't care about the whispers or the stares. He could see Isabella more clearly now, the exhaustion etched into every line of her young face, the way she swayed slightly from holding 2 babies for God knew how long. But her eyes, when they met his, held something that made his chest ache. Not defeat, not yet, but the kind of weary acceptance that came right before surrender. Victoria Ashworth was looking at him like he was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. The crowd was buzzing with confusion and curiosity, but Nathan only cared about one thing, the girl with the babies who looked like she was facing the end of the world with nothing but stubborn dignity. What happened next would shatter the careful cruelty of this moment and change 3 lives forever. But first, Nathan had something to say. Nathan stopped about 15 feet from the makeshift podium, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into Isabella's face, close enough to count the tiny beads of sweat on her forehead from holding 2 babies in the oppressive heat. The room had gone dead silent, except for the mechanical hum of the air conditioning and the distant rumble of traffic outside. Every eye was on him now, but he kept his gaze locked on the girl who looked like she was drowning in front of a crowd of people too comfortable to throw her a rope. Victoria Ashworth's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around the microphone. Her diamond tennis bracelet caught the fluorescent lights as she leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on the tone of someone addressing an unwelcome interruption. "Excuse me," she said, her words clipped and precise. "This is a private family matter. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Nathan didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there in his faded jeans and work-stained t-shirt, looking completely out of place among the designer clothes and professional haircuts. But there was something in his stillness that made the room feel electric, like the moment before. Lightning strikes. One of the lawyers flanking Victoria stepped forward. He was tall, thin, and had the kind of pale complexion that spoke of air-conditioned offices and expense account lunches. His suit probably cost more than Nathan made in 3 months. "Sir, we're going to need you to exit the premises immediately," the lawyer said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is a legally protected proceeding, and your presence constitutes interference." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he still didn't speak. His eyes moved from Isabella to the babies in her arms, then back to Victoria Ashworth. The woman was practically vibrating with indignation. Her carefully applied makeup. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. From somewhere in the crowd, a voice called out, "Just let the man stay. This is supposed to be public anyway, right?" Nathan recognized the speaker as Mrs. Chen, who ran the corner grocery store. She was one of the few locals who looked genuinely uncomfortable with the whole spectacle. Victoria's smile was razor thin. "Of course, anyone is welcome to witness these proceedings. We have nothing to hide." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the room. The Ashworth family has always believed in transparency, especially when dealing with those who would take advantage of our generosity. Isabella flinched at that, just barely, but Nathan caught it. One of the babies made a soft cooing sound, and she automatically adjusted her grip, swaying slightly in the unconscious rhythm all parents learn. The simple gesture made Nathan's chest ache. She was just a kid herself, but she was already fluent in the language of motherhood. Victoria cleared her throat and continued, her voice growing stronger as she warmed to her theme. "For those who may not be familiar with the situation, let me provide some context. 6 months ago, Miss Martinez here claimed that my late nephew, Trevor Ashworth, was the father of her offspring." The way she said the word made it sound like an accusation. Trevor, as many of you know, was a promising young man who tragically died in a motorcycle accident before these claims could be properly investigated. Miss Martinez appeared at our door shortly after the funeral, demanding support for her babies and spinning elaborate stories about promises Trevor allegedly made. Nathan watched Isabella's face carefully. She wasn't denying anything, but she wasn't confirming it either. She just stood there, taking each word like a physical blow, her arms unconsciously tightening around her sons. "Initially," Victoria continued, "the family chose to err on the side of compassion. We provided Miss Martinez with temporary housing, financial support, and even legal assistance. We asked for nothing in return except honesty and discretion." A murmur of approval rippled through some sections of the crowd. Nathan noticed it was mostly the well-dressed suburbanites nodding along, while the locals looked increasingly uncomfortable. However, Victoria's voice sharpened. Recent developments have made it clear that Miss Martinez's claims were exaggerated. DNA testing, which she initially refused and then delayed, has finally been completed. Nathan felt his stomach drop. He could see where this was heading, and it was going to be brutal. Victoria reached into her designer purse and produced a manila envelope with the theatrical flair of a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. The results are conclusive. While there is some distant familial connection, the children are not directly related to Trevor Ashworth. The room erupted. Voices rose in surprise, judgment, and vindication. Someone near the back shouted, "I knew it!" while others shook their heads in disgust. Nathan watched Isabella's face crumple for just a moment before she forced it back into that mask of stubborn dignity. "Some distant familial connection," Victoria repeated, savoring the words. In other words, Miss Martinez took advantage of a grieving family's generosity by exploiting a tenuous relationship that gave her story just enough plausibility to fool us temporarily. "That's not true," Isabella said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the shocked silence that followed. It was the first time she'd spoken, and her voice was younger than Nathan had expected, shaky with exhaustion and stress. Victoria's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Oh, now you have something to say? How convenient. And what exactly isn't true, dear? The DNA results? The fact that you've been living in our pool house for 6 months under false pretenses? The reality that you used our grief to manipulate your way into our family?" "Trevor loved me," Isabella said louder now, though her voice still trembled. "He loved us. He promised he'd take care of us when the babies came. He said his family would welcome us." Victoria laughed, and it was one of the cruelest sounds Nathan had ever heard. "Trevor made a lot of promises he couldn't keep, dear. Usually to pretty girls who didn't understand the difference between pillow talk and actual commitment." The words hit Isabella like slaps. Nathan could see her recoil with each one, her face flushing with shame and anger. One of the babies began to fuss, sensing his mother's distress, and she automatically began bouncing him gently while glaring at Victoria with eyes that blazed. "He was going to marry me," Isabella said, her voice stronger now, fueled by desperation. "Before the accident, he gave me this." She awkwardly shifted one baby to free her hand and pulled out a simple silver ring hanging from a chain around her neck. "He said it was a promise ring, that we'd make it official after graduation." Victoria's expression didn't change, but Nathan caught the flicker of recognition in her eyes. She knew about the ring, which meant she probably knew about a lot more than she was admitting. "My dear girl," Victoria said, her tone dripping with false sympathy, "Trevor gave those rings to half the girls in his graduating class. I found 3 of them in his bedroom dresser after the funeral. They were party favors from some club in Mexico. They cost about $15 each." The words hung in the air like poison. Isabella's face went white, then red, then white again. The hand holding the chain trembled so violently that Nathan was afraid she might drop one of the babies. "Even if Trevor had actual feelings for you," Victoria continued relentlessly, "the fact remains that these children are not his. You are not a member of this family, and you are no longer welcome to pretend otherwise." Isabella opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked around the room desperately, as if searching for a single friendly face, a single person who might speak up on her behalf. She found none. The locals looked down at their shoes, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge the Ashworth power. The suburbanites looked satisfied, like justice was finally being served. The lawyers looked bored, like this was just another day at the office. Victoria nodded to one of the security guards Nathan hadn't noticed before. "Please escort Miss Martinez and her children from the premises. Their belongings will be delivered to whatever address she provides within 48 hours. "Wait," Isabella said desperately, shifting both babies to one arm so she could reach into her diaper bag. "I have pictures, I have messages. I can prove Trevor cared about us. I can prove he wanted to be a father to them." "Prove what?" Victoria snapped, her careful composure finally cracking. "That my nephew felt sorry for some girl who got herself pregnant and decided to make it his problem. Even if he did say those things, so what? He's dead. His promises died with him, and we are under no obligation to honor the foolish commitments of a 22-year-old boy who barely knew how to balance his own checkbook." The cruelty of it took Nathan's breath away. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. This was about erasing a young woman's entire reality, making her question everything she'd believed about love and family and belonging. Isabella stood there, clutching her babies and her worthless promises. facing a room full of people who had already decided she was guilty of something. The security guard was moving toward her now, his hand resting on the radio clipped to his belt, and that's when Nathan realized he couldn't stay silent anymore. Nathan felt something snap inside his chest, like a rope that had been stretched too tight for too long, finally giving way. He'd been watching this public execution, disguised as a family meeting for 10 minutes, and every word out of Victoria Ashworth's mouth made him sicker. The way she talked about Isabella like she was a piece of trash that needed disposing of, the way she dismissed those babies like they were inconveniences rather than human beings, the way the entire room sat there and let it happen. It reminded him of the worst day of his life. He could see Sarah lying in that hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere, while the insurance representative stood at the foot of her bed, explaining why experimental treatments weren't covered under their policy. The man had used the same tone Victoria was using now, that careful, professional coldness that made cruelty sound reasonable. Sarah had been dying, and this stranger in a suit was talking about acceptable losses and cost-benefit analyses like she was a line item in a budget. Nathan had wanted to strangle that man with his bare hands. Instead, he'd sat there and nodded, and signed papers and watched his wife die, because fighting the system felt impossible. But this wasn't an insurance company or a hospital bureaucracy. This was just people choosing to be cruel because they could get away with it. And Nathan was done watching good people get steamrolled by those with more money and power. The security guard was 3 steps away from Isabella when Nathan moved. "Stop right there." His voice cut through the room like a gunshot. Not loud, exactly, but carrying the kind of authority that came from years of construction work, of managing crews and settling disputes and making himself heard over heavy machinery. The security guard actually stopped mid-step, looking confused. Victoria Ashworth's head snapped toward Nathan, her eyes blazing with the kind of fury that came from having her carefully orchestrated performance interrupt. Nathan stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and the podium. Up close, he could see that Isabella was shaking, though whether from exhaustion, fear, or rage was impossible to tell. The babies seemed to sense the tension, their wide eyes moving between their mother and the strange man who'd suddenly inserted himself into their world. "You're proceeding," Nathan repeated, his voice steady, but carrying an edge that made several people in the front row shift uncomfortably. "Is that what we're calling this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like a lynch mob with better clothes." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face went white with shock, then red with indignation. "How dare you? This is a legal matter being handled according to proper procedures. We have every right to..." "To what?" Nathan interrupted, taking another step forward. "To humiliate an 18-year-old girl in front of a room full of strangers. To call her babies bastards and throw them out on the street like garbage. What exactly gives you the right to do that?" One of the lawyers moved closer to Victoria, whispering urgently in her ear. She waved him away impatiently, her attention fixed on Nathan like a snake watching a mouse that had gotten too bold. "The right," she said slowly, "comes from the fact that this girl has been defrauding my family for 6 months. Living in our property, eating our food, spending our money, all while knowing perfectly well that her children have no legitimate claim to the Ashworth name or estate." Nathan glanced at Isabella, who was staring at him with a mixture of confusion and desperate hope. She looked like someone who'd been drowning for so long that she'd forgotten what rescue looked like. "So the DNA test proved the babies aren't directly related to your nephew," Nathan said, his voice growing stronger as the anger built inside him. "Congratulations, you caught an 18-year-old girl in the terrible crime of believing a dead boy's promises." "Those promises were lies," Victoria snapped. "Trevor never had any intention of..." "How do you know?" Nathan shot back. "Were you there for every conversation? Did you monitor every text message, every late-night phone call, every moment these two spent together? Or are you just assuming that your nephew was incapable of genuine feelings because it's easier than admitting your family failed him? The room was dead silent now, the earlier murmur of voices replaced by the kind of breathless attention that came when people sensed a real fight brewing. Nathan could feel eyes on him from every direction, but he kept his focus on Victoria and the way her carefully composed mask was starting to crack. "My nephew," she said through gritted teeth, "was a troubled young man who made poor choices. But that doesn't make us responsible for cleaning up the messes he left behind." "Messes?" Nathan's voice rose slightly, the first crack in his controlled demeanor. "Is that what you call them?" He gestured toward Isabella and the babies. "Two innocent kids and their mother are messes to be cleaned up?" Nathan felt something shift inside his chest, a loosening of the careful walls he'd built around his heart over the past 2 years. Since Sarah's death, he'd been going through the motions of living without actually engaging with life. Work, sleep, eat, repeat. No connections, no risks, no chances for anyone else to disappoint or abandon him. But looking at Isabella standing, there with her babies, facing down a room full of people who wanted to erase her existence, Nathan remembered what it felt like to care about something beyond survival. "I'll tell you what I see," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I see a girl who fell in love with the wrong guy and trusted the wrong promises. I see 2 babies who didn't ask to be born into this mess but deserve better than being called illegitimate bastards by people who wouldn't know love if it bit them on their diamond-covered backsides." Someone in the crowd let out a nervous laugh, quickly stifled. Victoria's face had gone purple with rage, but Nathan wasn't. "Done. Most of all," he continued, "I see a room full of adults who are perfectly comfortable watching a teenager and 2 babies get thrown out on the street because it's easier than questioning whether maybe, just maybe, your precious nephew actually cared about this girl and meant what he said." Nathan took another step forward, close enough now that he could see the slight tremor in Victoria's hands as she gripped the podium. "When did we become the kind of people who destroy families for sport? When did we decide that protecting money was more important than protecting people? This is not about money," Victoria hissed, but Nathan could hear the lie in her voice. "Isn't it?" Nathan asked. "Because if those babies were Trevor's biological children, they'd have a claim to inheritance money, and if Isabella was his acknowledged girlfriend, she might have rights to something too. But if you can prove she's just some gold digger who seduced your nephew and lied about paternity, then you can make this whole problem disappear without costing the family a dime." Victoria's lawyer stepped forward quickly, his face pale. "Sir, you're making some very serious accusations that could constitute slander." Nathan turned to look at the lawyer, and something in his expression made the man step back. "Am I? Then prove me wrong. Show me one piece of evidence that Isabella knew these babies weren't Trevor's biological children. Show me one text message, one conversation, one moment where she admitted to lying." Silence. Nathan looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. "That's what I thought. Because the truth is, this girl probably believed every word Trevor told her. She probably really thought she was going to be part of this family. And when he died, she probably thought that family would honor his promises and help her raise his children." He turned back to Victoria, who was practically vibrating with fury. "Instead, she found out that money matters more than promises, lawyers. Matter more than love, and DNA tests matter more than the bonds that make real families." Nathan felt his voice catch slightly, memories of his own losses threatening to overwhelm him. But he pushed through it, drawing strength from the righteous anger that had been building in his chest. "I know what it's like," he said quietly, his words carrying clearly in the hushed room. "I know what it feels like to lose everything and have people act like it's your fault for believing things would work out differently." Isabella was staring at him now, with tears streaming down her face, and Nathan realized that no one had defended her in months. Maybe no one had ever defended her. So here's what's going to happen, Nathan said, his voice gaining strength and conviction with each word. This girl and her babies are not going to be thrown out on the street today. Not while I'm standing. Here, Victoria's eyes narrowed to slits. And who exactly are you to interfere in family business? Nathan smiled, and it wasn't a particularly nice expression. I'm nobody special, just a guy who remembers what it feels like to be abandoned by people who were supposed to care. He turned toward Isabella, who was watching him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. My name is Nathan Rivers, and I've got a truck, an apartment, and a job that pays the bills. It's not much, but it's better than being homeless with 2 babies. The room erupted into chaos. Victoria was shouting something about police and restraining orders. The lawyers were frantically whispering. Half the crowd was on their feet, some horrified, others applauding. But Nathan only cared about one thing: the look of desperate gratitude in Isabella's eyes as she realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going to face this alone after all. The chaos in the room was immediate and electric. Voices rose from every direction as people processed what had just happened. Someone near the back was clapping slowly, deliberately. A woman in the middle section gasped and clutched her purse like Nathan had just announced he was robbing the place. The lawyers flanking Victoria were whispering furiously, their expensive suits rustling with urgency. But Nathan kept his eyes on Isabella, who was staring at him like he'd just spoken in a foreign language she was desperately trying to understand. You don't even know me, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the din. One of the babies had started fussing, picking up on the tension, and she automatically began the gentle bouncing motion that all parents learn. Why would you do that? Before Nathan could answer, Victoria's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is absolutely unacceptable. She was gripping the podium so tightly, her knuckles had gone white. Her carefully applied makeup, unable to hide the fury contorting her features. Security! I want this man removed immediately. He's disrupting a legal proceeding and making threats against my family. The security guard who had been approaching Isabella now seemed torn, looking between Victoria and Nathan like he was trying to figure out which order to follow first. Nathan could see the confusion in the man's face. This wasn't the kind of situation covered in security training manuals. One of Victoria's lawyers stepped forward, his voice taking on the practiced authority of someone who spent his days intimidating people in courtrooms. Sir, I'm going to have to advise you that making unrealistic promises to someone in distress could constitute interference with legal proceedings. We could have you arrested for what? The voice came from the back of the room, strong and clear. Nathan twisted around to see who had spoken and felt his eyebrows rise in surprise. Margaret Santos was making her way through the crowd, her grey hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her nurse's scrubs suggesting she'd come straight from her shift at the hospital. Nathan knew her by reputation more than personal acquaintance, but everyone in town knew Margaret. She'd been delivering babies and patching up the broken for 40 years, and she didn't have much patience for bullies. Mrs. Santos, Victoria's voice took on a tone of forced politeness. This really isn't your concern. We're handling a private family matter. Margaret reached the front of the room and planted herself firmly beside Nathan, her arms crossed over, her chest in a way that suggested she wasn't going anywhere. Private family matter. Is that what we're calling public humiliation now? She looked around the room, her gaze lingering on faces she recognized. Because last I checked, when you invite half the town to watch you destroy a young mother, it stops being private. Nathan felt something ease in his chest. He wasn't alone in this anymore. Margaret turned her attention to Isabella, her expression softening in the way it did when she was dealing with patients. Honey, what's your name? Isabella, came the whispered reply. Isabella Martinez. Well, Isabella, I'm Margaret Santos, and I've been bringing babies into this world longer than most of these people have been alive. She gestured toward the crowd, including this young man here. Her eyes flicked to Nathan with what might have been approval. And I can tell you right now that those boys of yours are beautiful, healthy, and deserving of better than this circus. Victoria's face had gone from red to purple. Mrs. Santos, with all due respect, you don't understand the complexities of this situation. This girl has been lying to my family for months, living off our charity under false pretenses. False pretenses. According to who? Margaret interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. According to DNA tests that prove what exactly? That a scared girl believed the promises of a boy who's not here to defend himself or her? The lawyer tried again, pulling out his phone. Ma'am, I'm calling the police. This is interference with... Go ahead and call them, Margaret said calmly. Call Sheriff Morrison. Tell him Margaret Santos said to get down here and explain to these folks the difference between offering help and committing a crime. Nathan realized he was holding his breath. Margaret wasn't just supporting him, she was taking charge in a way that made Victoria's careful orchestration look petty and mean-spirited by comparison. Now, Margaret continued, turning back to Isabella, these gentlemen have made you an offer of help. Are you interested in hearing more about it, or would you prefer to figure out where you and your babies are sleeping tonight all by yourself? Isabella looked between Nathan and Margaret, her eyes wide with something that might have been hope if she dared to let herself feel it. I don't understand what's happening. 10 minutes ago I was being thrown out with nothing, and now... Now, you've got options, Nathan said quietly. It's not charity and it's not pity. It's just people looking out for each other. Victoria made a sound of disgust. This is ridiculous. You don't even know what you're offering. Do you have any idea what it costs to support 2 infants? Do you understand the medical expenses, the child care, the complete disruption of your life? Nathan felt his jaw tighten. As a matter of fact, I do understand. My wife and I spent 2 years trying to have kids before she got pregnant. We spent another 2 years watching her body fail while she carried our daughter. I understand exactly what babies cost and what they're worth. The room went quiet again. Nathan could feel people staring, but he kept his attention on Victoria and the ugly satisfaction in her eyes as she sensed weakness. And where is your daughter now? Victoria asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Because I don't see any children with you. The words hit like a physical blow. Nathan felt his breath catch, felt the familiar surge of grief that still caught him off guard, even 2 years later. For a moment he was back in that hospital room, holding Sarah's hand while she whispered apologies for things that weren't her fault, while their daughter grew silent and still in her exhausted arms. But before the pain could overwhelm him, he felt a gentle touch on his arm. Margaret was looking at him with eyes that had seen enough loss to recognize it in others. Some of us, Margaret said quietly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, know exactly how precious babies are because we know how easily they can be lost. Nathan nodded, not trusting his voice. Margaret squeezed his arm once, then released it. Isabella was looking at Nathan with new understanding in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." "It's not your fault," Nathan managed. "It's nobody's fault. But that's exactly why I can't stand here and watch you go through this alone." Victoria's lawyer stepped forward again, his face set in determined lines. "This is all very touching, but the legal reality is that Miss Martinez has no claim to Ashworth property or support. These gentlemen can offer whatever help they want, but it doesn't change the fact that she needs to vacate family property immediately." "Fine," Nathan said. "Then she leaves with me, right now." Isabella blinked. "But my things, the baby's clothes, their cribs. We'll figure it out," Nathan said. "Margaret, do you know anyone who might have baby supplies we could borrow for tonight?" Margaret smiled grimly. Honey, I know every mother in 3 counties who's ever had twins. We'll have you sorted by dinner time. This is insane, Victoria sputtered. You're all insane. You're making decisions based on emotion instead of facts. You're enabling a proven liar and manipulator. Nathan turned to face her fully, and whatever she saw in his expression made her step back slightly. The only facts I care about, he said, and quietly, are these. There's a young mother with 2 babies who needs help, and I'm in a position to give it. Everything else is just noise. He looked at Isabella, who was clutching her babies and staring at him like he was some kind of miracle. She was afraid to believe in. The offer stands, Nathan said. My truck, my apartment, and whatever help I can give until you figure out what comes next. No strings attached, no expectations, just a safe place to land. Isabella looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of people who had watched her humiliation with everything from disgust to entertainment. Then she looked back at Nathan and Margaret, who were waiting patiently for her decision. Okay, she whispered. Then, louder, okay, thank you. Victoria made a sound of pure frustration, but Nathan was already moving toward the door, Margaret beside him, Isabella following with her babies clutched tight against her chest. Behind them, the room erupted again, but Nathan didn't look back. Sometimes the most important moments in life required walking away from the noise and toward something that might just turn out to be hope. The drive to Nathan's apartment was wrapped in the kind of silence that felt both fragile and sacred. Isabella sat in the passenger seat of his truck, one baby cradled in each arm, her eyes fixed on the road ahead like she was afraid to look back. The twins had finally settled into an uneasy sleep, their small faces peaceful despite the chaos they'd just escaped. Nathan kept his hands steady on the wheel, stealing glances at the young woman beside him, who looked like she was trying to convince herself this wasn't all an elaborate dream. Margaret followed in her own car, having insisted on coming along to help with the initial settling in. First nights are always the hardest, she'd said matter-of-factly as they'd walked out of the community center together. No point in anyone going through it alone. Nathan's apartment complex was nothing special. A collection of 2-story buildings arranged around a central courtyard with a pool that had seen better decades. But it was clean, quiet, and affordable, which had been his main requirements when he'd moved there after Sarah's death. He'd needed something completely different from the house they'd shared. Something that didn't echo with memories of plans that would never come to fruition. He pulled into his designated parking spot and turned off the engine. For a moment, nobody moved. The weight of what had just happened seemed to settle over them like dust. This is really happening, Isabella said quietly. Not quite a question, but not quite a statement either. Only if you want it to, Nathan replied. No pressure, no obligations. We can sit here as long as you need to think about it. Isabella turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time since they'd left the community center. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, with thick lashes that made her look even younger than her 18 years. But there was something in her gaze that spoke of experiences that had aged her beyond her time. Why? She asked simply. And don't. Say it's because you know what it's like to lose everything. There has to be more than that. Nathan considered the question, surprised by its directness. He'd expected gratitude, maybe wariness, but not this kind of clear-eyed analysis. Honestly, he said, I've been going through the motions for 2 years, getting up, going to work, coming home, going to sleep, repeat. I wasn't really living, just surviving. And when I saw what they were doing to you in there, he paused, searching for the right words. It reminded me that there are still things worth fighting for. Isabella nodded slowly, like his answer made sense to her in some fundamental way. I haven't had anyone fight for me in a long time, she admitted. Maybe never. Margaret's gentle knock on the passenger window interrupted the moment. Nathan got out to help her retrieve the bags she'd somehow managed to gather during their brief stop at a local store. Paper sacks full of diapers, formula, baby food, and what looked like enough supplies to outfit a small nursery. "Don't ask how I managed this so fast," Margaret said with a wink. "Let's just say the mum network in this town is more efficient than the fire department." Nathan's apartment was on the second floor, accessible by an external staircase that he climbed every day without thinking about it. But watching Isabella navigate the steps while carrying two babies made him realize how many simple things become complicated when you are responsible for tiny humans. The apartment itself was sparse, but clean. One bedroom, one bathroom, a living area that flowed into a small kitchen. The furniture was functional rather than stylish, chosen more for durability than appearance. It was the living space of someone who had stopped caring about creating a home and settled for having shelter. Isabella stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. The babies had woken during the climb upstairs and were beginning to fuss, their internal schedules disrupted by the day's upheaval. "They're probably hungry," Isabella said, the automatic response of a mother who had learned to interpret every sound and movement. "And they need changing. I'm sorry, I know this isn't what you signed up for." "Stop apologizing," Nathan said firmly but gently. "You're not imposing. You're accepting help. There's a difference." Margaret was already unpacking supplies on the kitchen counter with the efficiency of someone who had been managing crises for decades. "Isabella, honey, you tend to those babies. Nathan and I will figure out the logistics." For the next hour, Nathan's quiet apartment transformed into something he'd never experienced, a functioning household. Margaret directed operations like a general commanding troops, sending Nathan to rearrange furniture while she helped Isabella feed and change the twins. The babies seemed to respond to Margaret's calm competence, settling more easily under her experienced hands. Nathan found himself watching Isabella carefully, not out of suspicion, but out of curiosity. She moved with the kind of automatic precision that came from months of solo parenting, anticipating each baby's needs before they fully expressed them. When one twin finished his bottle, she had already positioned a burp cloth on her shoulder. When the other started to fuss, she knew exactly which bouncing rhythm would soothe him. "You're good at this," he observed, as she settled both babies on a blanket Margaret had spread on the living room floor. Isabella looked up, surprised. "Good at what?" "Being a mum. You make it look natural." A shadow crossed her face. "I had to learn fast. When you don't have anyone else to rely on, you figure it out, or..." She didn't finish the sentence, but Nathan could fill in the blanks. Margaret emerged from the kitchen, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who had successfully imposed order on chaos. "The boys are beautiful," she announced, settling into Nathan's only comfortable chair. "Strong, healthy, alert. How old are they?" 7 months next week, Isabella replied, automatically reaching out to touch the nearest baby's foot. "Their names are Diego and Miguel." Nathan felt something warm settle in his chest at the gesture, the unconscious need to maintain physical contact even when the babies were safe and content. It reminded him of Sarah during her pregnancy, how she'd constantly rested her hands on her growing belly like she was reassuring their daughter that she was there, that she was wanted. "Those are strong names," Margaret said approvingly. "Family names?" "My grandfather and my father," Isabella said quietly. "I wanted them to have something that connected them to where they came from, even if..." She gestured vaguely, encompassing everything that had led to this moment. Nathan poured himself coffee and sat cross-legged on the floor near the babies, close enough to help, but not so close as to intrude. Diego, the more alert of the twins, was studying Nathan's face with the intense concentration babies brought to new experiences. "What do you need?" Nathan asked Isabella. "Not just tonight, but going forward. Practically speaking." Isabella looked overwhelmed by the question. "I don't know everything. I have a high school diploma and 6 months of experience changing diapers. I've never had a real job, never lived on my own, never had to figure out things like insurance or childcare or..." Her voice started to rise with panic. "Hey," Nathan said gently, "one thing at a time. Let's start with tonight. Tomorrow we can worry about tomorrow." Margaret nodded approvingly. "That's exactly right. You don't solve everything at once. You just solve the next thing that needs solving." They spent the evening establishing routines that felt both temporary and strangely permanent. Nathan gave Isabella his bedroom and set up a makeshift nursery in one corner, using a borrowed crib and changing station that Margaret had somehow conjured from her network of mothers. He made himself comfortable on the couch, discovering that his living room had a completely different feeling when it was filled with the soft sounds of babies settling into sleep. Around 10 o'clock, after the twins had been fed, changed, and coaxed into their cribs, the 3 adults sat in the living room sharing leftover pizza that Nathan had ordered. It was the first relaxed moment of the day, the first time Isabella had looked something other than terrified or exhausted. "I keep waiting for the catch," she admitted, picking at her pizza crust. "People don't just help like this, not without wanting something back." Nathan met her eyes steadily. "Sometimes they do. Sometimes people help because they remember what it felt like to need help. And sometimes," Margaret added, gathering up the empty plates, "people help because they recognize that we're all just one disaster away from needing the same kind of grace." Isabella nodded slowly, but Nathan could see the wariness still there, the protective instinct of someone who had learned that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. It would take time, Nathan realized. Trust wasn't rebuilt in a single evening, no matter how dramatic the rescue. But as he listened to the gentle sounds of babies breathing in his bedroom and watched Isabella finally allow herself to relax fractionally, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 years, the sense that his life might have purpose beyond simply continuing to exist. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and practical problems that couldn't be solved with good intentions alone. But tonight, they had managed something that felt like the beginning of safety. And sometimes, Nathan thought as he settled into the couch that would be his bed for the foreseeable future, beginnings were enough. 3 weeks later, Nathan's apartment had become something he barely recognized. It wasn't just the baby equipment that had gradually taken over every available surface, or the way his coffee table now served as a makeshift changing station more often than a place to rest his feet. It was something deeper, a sense of aliveness that he'd forgotten was possible. The transformation had been gradual but undeniable. What started as a temporary arrangement had evolved into something that resembled a functioning household, complete with routines that none of them had consciously planned, but had somehow emerged naturally. Nathan would wake to the sound of Isabella, singing softly to the twins in Spanish, her voice carrying through the thin walls like a gentle alarm clock. By the time he emerged from the bathroom, she'd usually have coffee brewing and the babies fed, their tiny faces bright with the alertness that came after a good night's sleep. But it was the unexpected discoveries that surprised Nathan most. Isabella, despite her youth and circumstances, possessed an intuitive understanding of organization that bordered on genius. Within a week, she'd transformed his chaotic kitchen into a model of efficiency, creating systems for everything from meal planning to baby supply inventory that actually made sense. His refrigerator door, previously empty except for takeout, Menus and expired coupons now displayed a color-coded schedule that somehow managed to coordinate his work shifts, the twins' feeding times, and Isabella's growing list of job interviews. "Where did you learn to do this?" Nathan had asked one morning, watching her efficiently pack his lunch, while simultaneously preparing bottles for the day and keeping one eye on Diego, who had recently discovered the fascinating properties of electrical outlets. Isabella had looked up from the sandwich she was assembling, genuinely confused by the question, "Do what?" "All of this." Nathan gestured around the kitchen, which looked more organized than it had since he'd moved in. The planning, the systems, making everything work together. It's like you have some kind of superpower. She'd laughed, but Nathan caught the flush of pleasure that colored her cheeks. "I guess when you're responsible for keeping 2 babies alive, with no help and no money, you get good at making do with what you have." It was more than that, though. Nathan had begun to suspect that Isabella possessed the kind of practical intelligence that couldn't be taught in schools, the ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. When the ancient washing machine in the complex laundry room broke down, flooding the basement and leaving 20 apartments without access to clean clothes, Isabella had organized an entire carpooling system to local laundromats, complete with scheduling and cost-sharing arrangements that had impressed even Margaret. "That girl has a gift for seeing the big picture," Margaret had observed after Isabella successfully negotiated with the building manager to provide partial rent credits while the laundry situation was resolved. "She thinks like a project manager. Someone should point her toward college." But it wasn't just Isabella who was revealing hidden capabilities. Nathan found himself developing skills he'd never known he possessed. Patience, for instance, the kind of deep, endless patience required to rock a fussy baby at 3 in the morning while Isabella caught a few hours of desperately needed sleep. Or creativity, the ability to turn a trip to the grocery store into an adventure that would entertain 7-month-old boys and make Isabella laugh. He'd also discovered he had a talent for advocacy that he'd never recognized. When Isabella's previous landlord had tried to claim she owed additional fees for breaking her lease early, Nathan had spent 2 hours on the phone with various bureaucrats, eventually connecting with someone at tenant services who not only waived the fees, but provided information about resources for young mothers that Isabella hadn't known existed. "You're like a bloodhound when you get focused on something," Isabella had told him after he'd successfully enrolled her in a program that would provide childcare assistance while she finished her GED. "I've never seen anyone research anything so thoroughly." The truth was, Nathan had forgotten how good it felt to fight for something that mattered. For 2 years, he'd been living defensively, trying to avoid additional pain rather than actively pursuing anything positive. But watching Isabella struggle with systems designed to discourage rather than help had awakened something protective and purposeful in him that went beyond simple kindness. The twins, meanwhile, were thriving in ways that surprised everyone, including Margaret, who had become a regular visitor and unofficial grandmother figure. Diego and Miguel had been shy, anxious babies when they'd first arrived, the kind of children who startled at sudden noises and seemed to expect disappointment. But consistent care and attention had transformed them into curious, interactive little people who laughed readily and reached for Nathan with the same enthusiasm they showed their mother. "They've never had a father figure before," Isabella had explained one evening as they watched Nathan help Diego practice sitting up while Miguel gnawed contentedly on a teething ring. Trevor was excited about being a dad, but he never actually got to do any of the daily stuff. "All they've known is me trying to figure everything out alone." Nathan had looked up from where he was helping Diego balance, catching the wistful sadness in Isabella's voice. What was he like? Really like? Not what his family said about him. Isabella had been quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. "Young, really young, you know, but not in a bad way. He was excited about everything, about the babies, about our future together. He used to talk about teaching them to ride bikes and taking them camping and all these plans. She trailed off, smiling at some memory Nathan couldn't see. He would have been a good father, Nathan had said quietly, and meant it. Yeah, Isabella had agreed. But he also would have been learning as he went, just like we all do. And he never would have had to do it alone, the way I did. That conversation had marked a turning point in their relationship, a shift from the careful politeness of strangers helping each other to something more honest and sustainable. They began talking about real things. Isabella's fears about her future, Nathan's grief over his losses, the practical challenges of building a life from nothing, and the unexpected joy they'd both found in their strange, improvised family. Margaret, watching this evolution with the satisfaction of someone who'd predicted exactly this outcome, had started bringing friends by for coffee, introducing Isabella to other young mothers and Nathan to men who'd successfully navigated single parenthood. What had started as a crisis intervention was becoming a genuine support network, the kind of community that formed naturally around people who were committed to making things work. "You know what I think happened here?" Margaret had said one afternoon, watching Nathan teach Diego to clap, while Isabella helped Miguel practice crawling across the living room carpet. "I think you all found what you didn't know you were looking for." Nathan had to admit she was right. He'd offered Isabella shelter, thinking he was providing temporary assistance to someone in crisis. Instead, he'd discovered that helping her heal had somehow enabled his own healing. Taking care of her babies had reminded him what it felt like to hope for someone's future rather than just grieving their past. And Isabella, who had arrived expecting nothing more than a brief reprieve from homelessness, was beginning to believe that maybe she deserved the stability and support that Nathan and Margaret seemed determined to provide. The twins were the real miracle, though. In 3 weeks, they'd transformed from anxious, clingy babies into confident explorers who treated Nathan's apartment like their personal playground. They'd developed distinct personalities. Diego was the cautious observer who studied everything carefully before diving in, while Miguel was the fearless experimenter who tested every boundary with cheerful determination. They're not scared anymore. Isabella had observed one morning, watching Miguel attempt to climb into the laundry basket, while Diego offered commentary in what sounded like a complex system of babbling. They expect good things now. It was exactly what Nathan had been thinking, but hadn't known how to articulate. Somehow, in the space of 3 weeks, they'd all begun expecting good things. Not perfect things, not easy things, but good things. The possibility of growth, of progress, of small daily victories that added up to something larger. And as Nathan watched Isabella efficiently pack the diaper bag for their first official outing as a family group to Margaret's weekly barbecue, he realized that what they'd built together was something none of them could have created alone. A sense of belonging that transcended blood relations and legal definitions. They were becoming, quite simply, a family. An accidental, improbable, completely functional family. The first real test came on a Saturday morning, 6 weeks after Isabella had moved in, when Nathan opened his front door to find Victoria Ashworth standing in the hallway. She looked exactly as he remembered from that day at the community center, impeccably dressed, perfectly composed, and radiating the kind of cold authority that came from a lifetime of getting her way. But there was something different in her expression now, a calculating sharpness that hadn't been there during the public spectacle of Isabella's dismissal. "Mr. Rivers," she said with a smile that never reached her eyes, "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I was hoping we could have a conversation." Nathan didn't step aside to let her in. Behind him, he could hear Isabella singing softly to the twins in the living room, their morning routine of playtime and bottle preparation, creating the kind of domestic background noise that had become the soundtrack of his new life. "Mrs. Ashworth," he said carefully. "What can I do for you?" "I think the question is what I can do for you," Victoria replied, her voice taking on the practiced smoothness of someone accustomed to negotiations. "May I come in? I promise this will only take a few minutes of your time." Every instinct Nathan possessed was screaming at him to close the door and deadbolt it behind him. But curiosity won out over caution, and he stepped back reluctantly, allowing Victoria to enter his apartment. She took in the space with a single sweeping glance that catalogued everything. The baby equipment scattered across the living room, the photos Isabella had started putting up on the refrigerator, the general organized chaos that came with housing 2 active 7-month-olds. Her expression didn't change, but Nathan caught the slight tightening around her eyes that suggested disapproval. Isabella emerged from the kitchen carrying Diego, with Miguel balanced on her hip. She stopped short when she saw Victoria, her face going pale. "Victoria," she said quietly, automatically adjusting her grip on the babies as if preparing to protect them. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Isabella," Victoria replied with that same cold smile. "I was just telling Mr. Rivers that I hoped we could all have a civilized conversation about the future." Nathan moved closer to Isabella, a gesture that wasn't lost on Victoria, whose sharp eyes missed nothing. "What kind of future?" Isabella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victoria settled herself on Nathan's couch without being invited, crossing her legs with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her welcome anywhere. The kind where everyone gets what. She opened her expensive handbag and pulled out a manila folder, placing it carefully on the coffee table between them. "I've been doing some research, Mr. Rivers, about you, your circumstances, your finances. It's amazing what public records can tell you about someone's situation." Nathan felt his jaw clench. "And what exactly did you discover?" "That you're a good man, trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation," Victoria said, her tone suggesting sympathy that didn't match the calculation in her eyes. "You work construction, which means your income is seasonal and unpredictable. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment that's barely suitable for a single man, let alone a family with 2 infants. Your savings account has been steadily declining since you took on the additional expenses of supporting Isabella and her children." Every word hit like a physical blow because they were all true. Nathan had been trying not to think about the mathematics of their situation, the way his careful budget had been stretched to the breaking point by formula, diapers, and the dozen other expenses that came with babies. Isabella was staring at Victoria with a mixture of horror and understanding, like someone watching a trap close around them in slow motion. "Furthermore," Victoria continued, opening the folder, "Isabella has no job skills, no education beyond high school, and no family support. The state assistance programs she's qualified for would provide barely enough to cover basic necessities, assuming she could find housing that accepts vouchers and childcare she could afford." "Get to the point," Nathan said, though part of him already knew where this was heading. Victoria's smile widened. "The point, Mr. Rivers, is that I'm here to offer you both a way out of this impossible situation, a way that benefits everyone involved." She pulled a document from the folder and placed it on the coffee table. Even from a distance, Nathan could see it was some kind of contract, multi-page and dense with legal language. "I'm prepared to provide Isabella with a monthly stipend of $5,000 for the next 18 years, Victoria said. "Enough to ensure the boys receive proper care, education, and opportunities. In addition, I'll establish college funds for both children and provide health insurance through the family's corporate plan." Isabella made a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Nathan felt his stomach drop as he began to understand the scope of what Victoria was proposing. "In exchange," Victoria continued, "Isabella agrees to relocate to a different state, with the understanding that there will be no further contact with the Ashworth family. No claims on inheritance, no requests for additional support, no attempts to establish paternity or family connections for the children. The room went completely silent, except for the soft babbling of the twins, who were oblivious to the bomb that had just been detonated in their living room. "You want to pay her to disappear," Nathan said finally. "I want to provide her with the resources to build an independent life somewhere else," Victoria corrected. "Somewhere she can give those boys the stability and opportunities they deserve, without the complications that come from maintaining connections to painful history." Isabella sat down heavily in Nathan's armchair, both babies still balanced on her lap. Her hands were shaking as she stared at the contract. $5,000 a month, she repeated, her voice hollow. "For 18 years. That's over $1 million, Victoria confirmed. More money than most people see in a lifetime. Enough to ensure you never have to worry about rent or food or medical bills again." Nathan wanted to snatch the contract and tear it into pieces, but he forced himself to stay still. This wasn't his decision to make, no matter how much he wanted to. "Protect Isabella from this particular kind of manipulation. And if I don't sign?" Isabella asked quietly. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Then you continue as you are, taking charity from Mr. Rivers, struggling to make ends meet, raising your children in poverty, while telling yourself that love is enough to overcome practical limitations." The words hung in the air like poison. Nathan felt something hot and protective flare in his chest, but before he could speak, Isabella looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "She's right," Isabella whispered. "I can't ask you to. Keep supporting us. It's not fair to you, and it's not what's best for Diego and Miguel." "That's not your decision to make," Nathan said firmly. "And it's definitely not her decision to make." Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced efficiency. "I'll leave the contract here for you to review. There's no pressure, no deadline. Just an opportunity for everyone to do what's best for these children." She moved toward the door, then turned back with one final observation. "Mr. Rivers, I can see that you care about Isabella and her boys. If you truly want what's best for them, you'll encourage her to seriously consider this offer, because caring about someone sometimes means helping them make difficult choices." After she left, Nathan and Isabella sat in silence for several minutes. The twins had grown fussy, picking up on the tension, and Isabella automatically began the soothing motions that had become second nature. "She's right about the money," Isabella said finally. "With that kind of security, I could give them everything. Good schools, college funds, opportunities I could never provide on my own." Nathan felt like he was drowning. Everything Victoria had said about his financial situation was true. He was struggling to maintain his current lifestyle while supporting 3 additional people, and it was only going to get harder as the twins grew and needed more. "Is that what you want?" he asked quietly. "To take the money and start over somewhere else?" Isabella was quiet for so long that Nathan thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I want to do what's right. For them, even if it breaks my heart." Nathan looked at the contract still sitting on his coffee table, then at Isabella holding her sons like she was already saying goodbye to them. Something fierce and protective rose in his chest, stronger than logic or financial concerns or practical limitations. "What if there was another option?" he said slowly. "What if we didn't have to choose between love and security?" Isabella looked up at him with eyes full of desperate hope. "What do you mean?" Nathan took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would change everything between them, for better or worse. "What if we made this permanent? Not just the living arrangement, but all of it. What if we became a real family?" The words hung in the air between them, neither question nor statement, but something more fragile and infinitely more important. Isabella stared at him for a long moment, her face cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been hope if she dared to let herself feel it. "Are you asking me to marry you?" she whispered. Nathan realized that yes, he was, and that somewhere along the way, he'd stopped thinking of her as someone he was helping and started thinking of her as someone he couldn't imagine living without. "I'm asking you to choose us," he said quietly. "Over the money, over the easy answer, over everything else. I'm asking you to choose the family we've already become." 1 year later, Nathan stood in the kitchen of their new house, watching through the window as Isabella chased Diego and Miguel around the backyard while they practiced their wobbly toddler steps. The boys had grown into confident explorers, their laughter filling the air as they discovered the fascinating properties of grass, rocks, and the patient golden retriever they'd adopted from the shelter 3 months earlier. The house wasn't much by most standards, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a fenced yard and a mortgage that stretched Nathan's salary to its limits. But it was theirs. Bought with a combination of Nathan's savings, Isabella's earnings from her new job at the hospital's administrative office, and a small loan from Margaret, who had insisted it was an investment in what she called the best thing to happen to this neighborhood in decades. Isabella had finished her GED 6 months after Victoria's visit, studying late into the night after the twins were asleep, with Nathan helping her navigate subjects she'd never had the chance to master properly. She'd walked across that stage with her head high and her family cheering from the audience, the first Martinez in 3 generations to graduate from anything. The job at the hospital had come through Margaret's connections, starting as a part-time filing position that had quickly evolved into something more substantial when Isabella's organizational skills and natural empathy caught the attention of supervisors. She was studying for her certified medical administrative assistant credentials now, attending classes 2 evenings a week while Nathan handled bath time and bedtime stories. Their wedding had been small, held in Margaret's backyard with a guest list that included mostly neighbors, co-workers, and the network of friends they'd accumulated through their various struggles and triumphs. Isabella had worn a simple white dress from the department store, and Nathan had bought his first suit since Sarah's funeral. Diego and Miguel had served as unofficial ring bearers, though their main contribution had been providing entertainment by attempting to eat the flower petals Margaret had scattered along the makeshift aisle. Victoria Ashworth had not attended, though she'd sent a gift, a silver picture frame with no accompanying card or note. Isabella had used it to display a photo from their wedding day, all 4 of them laughing as Miguel decided the ceremony was the perfect time to take his first independent steps, tottering across the grass toward Nathan's outstretched arms. The legal adoption had been finalized 3 months after the wedding, with both boys officially becoming Rivers, legally and practically. Nathan had insisted on keeping Martinez as a middle name for both children, wanting them to maintain their connection to Isabella's heritage and their own origins. They should know where they came from, he'd explained to the family court judge, who handled the paperwork. But they should also know they're wanted exactly where they are. The process had been surprisingly straightforward, helped by the fact that no biological father was listed on either birth certificate, and no one had contested the adoption. Victoria's silence on the matter spoke volumes about her true priorities, but Nathan chose to interpret it as a gift rather than an abandonment. Diego and Miguel, now 18 months old, had grown into distinct personalities who brought different kinds of joy to their household. Diego remained the cautious observer, preferring to study new situations carefully before committing to participation. He was the twin who stacked blocks methodically, who ate his vegetables without complaint, and who could sit quietly through entire picture books with the focused attention of a scholar. Miguel was his opposite in almost every way. The fearless experimenter who approached life with an enthusiasm that bordered on recklessness. He was the one who had figured out how to open kitchen cabinets, who treated every piece of furniture as potential climbing equipment, and who had already demonstrated a talent for escaping from supposedly secure enclosures that suggested a future career in either law enforcement or professional burglary. Both boys had developed a special bond with Nathan that went beyond simple affection. They looked for him when they woke up from naps, brought him their toys when they wanted to play, and had learned to say "Dada" with the kind of confidence that suggested they'd never questioned his role in their lives. They don't remember before. Isabella had observed one evening as they watched Nathan help both boys with a puzzle that was probably too advanced for their age, but that they were determined to conquer through persistence. To them, this is how families have always been. Nathan had found that observation both comforting and sobering. The boys would grow up with no memory of those early months of uncertainty, no recollection of the day their world had almost fallen. Apart in a community center meeting room. For them, the story would always be simple. They belonged to parents who loved them, in a house that was safely theirs, surrounded by people who celebrated their existence rather than questioning their worth. Margaret had become an honorary grandmother, the kind who showed up with homemade cookies and unsolicited parenting advice in equal measure. She'd watched the twins during Isabella's evening classes, taught them Spanish words that Isabella had been too exhausted to share during those early struggling months, and served as the unofficial family historian who documented every milestone. With the dedication of a professional photographer. "You know what I think?" Margaret had said one afternoon, watching Nathan teach the boys to play catch with soft foam balls, while Isabella worked at the kitchen table on her certification study materials. "I think this is exactly how it was supposed to work out." Nathan wasn't sure he believed in predetermined destinies, but he had to admit that their unconventional beginning had led to something that felt more solid and genuine than many traditional families he'd observed. They'd built their relationships on choice rather than obligation, on mutual support rather than assumed roles, on the daily decision to show up for each other regardless of legal or biological connections. The financial struggles hadn't disappeared overnight. Nathan still worried about unexpected expenses. Isabella still clipped coupons and planned meals around grocery store sales, and they both understood that their margin for error was smaller than they'd prefer. But somehow, the money anxiety that had felt crushing during those early weeks had transformed into something more manageable, a challenge they faced together rather than a crisis that threatened their survival. "We're not rich," Isabella had said recently while reviewing their monthly budget, "but we're not scared anymore either." That absence of fear, Nathan reflected, might be the most significant change of all. For the first time since Sarah's death, he woke up looking forward to the day rather than simply enduring it. For Isabella, the constant anxiety about her children's future had been replaced by the confidence that came from having concrete plans and reliable support. The twins, meanwhile, were growing up assuming that the world was a safe place where adults could be trusted to meet their needs and celebrate their achievements. It was an assumption that Nathan and Isabella worked daily to earn and maintain. As he watched his family through the kitchen window, Nathan thought about the moment, exactly 1 year ago, when he'd made that impulsive offer to help a stranger in crisis. He'd thought he was providing temporary assistance, a bridge between one devastating situation and whatever came next. He'd had no idea he was actually finding his way home. The back door opened, and Isabella came inside, carrying Miguel, while Diego toddled behind them, both boys red-cheeked and grass-stained from their outdoor adventures. They looked like the picture of health and happiness, secure in the knowledge that they were exactly where they belonged. "Dada!" Miguel announced, reaching for Nathan with the kind of total trust that still took Nathan's breath away. "Hey, buddy," Nathan said, scooping up his son and pressing a kiss to his dandelion-scented hair. "Did you have fun outside?" Diego wrapped himself around Nathan's leg, his own version of affection that was quieter but no less meaningful. Isabella smiled at the sight of her boys gravitating toward the man who had become their anchor in every sense that mattered. "They missed you," she said, though Nathan suspected the missing had been mutual. Later that evening, after the twins were bathed and bedtime stories had been read and the house had settled into its nighttime quiet, Nathan and Isabella sat on their small front porch, watching the neighborhood wind down for the day. It had become their favorite time, this peaceful transition between the busy complexity of family life and the simple intimacy of a couple who had chosen each other against all odds. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd never met?" Isabella asked, her head resting on Nathan's shoulder. Nathan considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but then I remember that we did meet, and we chose each other, and that's what matters." "Not just met," Isabella corrected softly. "You chose to get involved. You could have just watched like everyone else." "So could you," Nathan pointed out. "You could have taken Victoria's money and started over somewhere else. But you chose to stay and build something with me instead." Isabella was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who understood exactly how close they'd come to missing this entirely. "I'm glad we were brave enough to choose love over security," she said finally. Nathan smiled, pulling her closer as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky above their modest neighborhood. "Turns out, we got both." Inside the house, they could hear the soft sounds of their sons sleeping peacefully in their shared bedroom, safe and secure in the knowledge that they would wake up to parents who loved them and a life that belonged to them completely. It wasn't the life any of them had planned or expected, but it was exactly the life they'd all been looking for, even when they hadn't realized they were searching. And sometimes, Nathan thought as he kissed his wife's forehead and listened to the contented silence of his home, the most beautiful families were born not from careful planning or perfect circumstances, but from the simple courage to help when help was needed and to stay when staying felt impossible. 2 years after their wedding, Nathan was installing new cabinets in the kitchen of a young couple's first home when he noticed the woman watching him work with an expression he'd learned to recognize. It was the look of someone carrying a weight they couldn't quite put into words, the same expression Isabella had worn during those early weeks when she'd been afraid to hope for anything permanent. Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen from the grocery store, was 23 and visibly pregnant with what Nathan had gathered was an unplanned but wanted baby. Her husband David worked nights at the warehouse to make ends meet, which meant Sarah spent most of her days alone in their small house, dealing with morning sickness and the anxiety that came with trying to prepare for parenthood on a shoestring. "Budget, Mr. Rivers," she said hesitantly as Nathan measured the space for the final cabinet. "Can I ask you something personal?" Nathan looked up from his tape measure, recognizing the tone of someone working up the courage to ask for help. "Sure. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, told me about your family, about how you met your wife. She said maybe you'd understand." Sarah trailed off, her hands unconsciously moving. Nathan set down his tools and gave her his full attention. Over the past 2 years, this had happened more often than he'd expected. Word had spread through their community about the unconventional family that had formed from crisis and choice. And people seemed to seek him out when they were facing their own impossible situations. "What's going on?" he asked gently. Sarah's story tumbled out in fits and starts. Her parents had disowned her when she'd married David, disapproving of his background and his prospects. David's family lived across the country and had their own financial struggles. They had no support system, no safety net, and no experience. With babies beyond the parenting books, they'd checked out from the library. "I'm scared," she admitted, tears starting to flow. "What if something goes wrong during delivery? What if the baby gets sick and we can't afford the medical bills? What if David loses his job and we can't make rent?" Nathan found himself remembering those early conversations with Isabella, the way fear had made everything seem impossible until they'd broken problems down into manageable pieces. "Have you been to the community center lately?" he asked. "The one on Magnolia Street?" Sarah shook her head, confused by the apparent change of subject. "There's a support group that meets there on Thursday evenings," Nathan continued. "Young parents, single parents, families dealing with financial stress. My wife Isabella helps coordinate it now." What Nathan didn't mention was how the group had started. 3 months after Diego and Miguel's first birthday, Isabella had been approached by a teenage mother at the grocery store who'd recognized her from the neighborhood. The girl, barely 17 and clearly overwhelmed, had asked if Isabella could recommend a good daycare that wouldn't cost more than rent. Isabella had ended up spending 2 hours in the grocery store parking lot, helping the teenager navigate state assistance programs and locate resources she'd never known existed. Word had spread, as it did in small communities, and soon Isabella was fielding regular calls from young mothers who needed everything from childcare referrals to someone to watch their kids during job interviews. "We should formalize this," Margaret had suggested after the 5th or 6th desperate phone call. "Turn it into something sustainable that can help more people." The Thursday evening group had grown from 3 families meeting in Margaret's living room to nearly 20 families gathering at the community center. Isabella had discovered she had a gift for connecting people with resources and helping them navigate systems that were designed to be discouraging. Nathan contributed his skills with practical problems: leaky faucets, broken appliances, landlord disputes, and the 1,000 small crises that felt overwhelming when you were already stretched thin. But the real magic happened when families helped each other. Experienced parents mentored new ones, people shared childcare responsibilities and meal preparation, and everyone contributed whatever they could to a collective effort that made individual struggles more manageable. "You should come this Thursday," Nathan told Sarah. "Isabella's great at connecting people with resources, and there are other couples going through similar situations." Sarah looked skeptical. "I don't know. David works Thursday nights, and I don't really like talking to strangers about personal stuff." "You just talked to me," Nathan pointed out gently. "And 2 years ago, I was terrified I'd made a huge mistake taking in a teenage mother and her twin babies. Now I can't imagine my life any other way." That Thursday evening, Nathan arrived home from work to find Isabella preparing snacks for the community center meeting, while Diego and Miguel helped by enthusiastically spreading peanut butter on crackers with more enthusiasm than accuracy. "How many tonight?" Nathan asked, kissing Isabella hello and automatically taking over cracker duty before the twins could redecorate the kitchen entirely. 14 families confirmed, Isabella replied, consulting the notebook where she kept track of everyone's situations and needs. Plus maybe 2 new ones. A young couple expecting their first baby and a single dad whose ex-wife moved across the country. Nathan recognized the careful way Isabella talked about people's situations. She'd developed a system for helping families without making them feel like charity cases, for connecting people with resources without making them feel dependent, and for building community support that felt empowering rather than pitying. "Mrs. Chen called this afternoon," Isabella continued. "She wants to sponsor a family for the emergency fund again." The emergency fund was Margaret's idea, a small pool of money contributed by community members to help families facing unexpected crises. $500 to cover car repairs when someone couldn't get to work otherwise, $200 for medical bills that insurance didn't cover, $50 for groceries when the paycheck didn't stretch far enough. It wasn't a lot of money individually, but Nathan had seen how it could mean the difference between a temporary setback and a complete financial collapse for families living on the edge. The meeting that night was typical of what the Thursday group had become. Part support group, part resource sharing session, part informal networking event. Families shared updates on job searches and parenting challenges. People offered practical help, like babysitting exchanges and bulk grocery shopping. Everyone contributed ideas for solving problems that seemed insurmountable when faced alone. Sarah did show up, nervous and uncertain, but drawn by the same desperation that had driven Nathan to act 2 years earlier. Nathan watched Isabella introduce her to other young mothers, connecting her immediately with people who understood her situation and could offer both emotional support and practical assistance. By the end of the evening, Sarah had contact information for 3 different childcare resources, a referral to a program that provided free prenatal classes, and an invitation to join a meal-sharing group for new mothers. More importantly, she discovered that she wasn't alone in her fears and uncertainties. "This is what you meant," she told Nathan as they cleaned up after the meeting, "about breaking problems down into pieces." "That's part of it," Nathan agreed. "But the bigger part is realizing you don't have to solve everything by yourself." On the drive home, Isabella was quieter than usual, and Nathan could tell she was processing something significant. "What's on your mind?" he asked as they pulled into their driveway. "I keep thinking about how different things could have been," Isabella said slowly. "If you hadn't stepped in that day, if Margaret hadn't supported us, if people like Mrs. Chen hadn't helped with practical things when we needed them most." Nathan parked the car, but made no move to get out. This was clearly a conversation that needed full attention. "We got lucky," Isabella continued. "We found each other and found people who were willing to help. But how many people don't get lucky? How many families fall apart because no one's willing to step in, or because they don't know resources exist, or because they're too proud to ask for help?" Nathan understood what she was getting at. Their Thursday evening group was making a difference for the families involved, but it was still small, still limited to people who happened to hear about it through word of mouth. "Are you thinking about expanding?" he asked. Isabella nodded. "Margaret and I have been talking about approaching other community centers, maybe even the city council, about creating an official program. Something bigger than what we can do in one meeting room once a week." It was a conversation they'd been dancing around for months. Isabella's natural organizational skills and her insight into the challenges facing young families had the potential to create something much larger than their current informal network. But expansion would mean more time, more responsibility, and potentially less time for their own family. "What do you think?" Isabella asked. "Are we ready for something like that?" Nathan looked at their house, where Diego and Miguel were sleeping, peacefully in the security of a home that had once seemed impossible. He thought about Sarah's face when she'd realized she wasn't alone, about the dozens of families who'd found support through their small weekly gatherings, about the ripple effects of kindness that kept expanding outward from that moment 2 years ago when he'd decided he couldn't stand by and watch injustice happen. "I think," he said slowly, "we're exactly ready for something like that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both understanding that they were on the verge of taking their accidental mission and turning it into something intentional and potentially transformative. "Besides," Nathan added with a smile, "the boys are old enough now to help with setup and cleanup. Diego would love having a job organizing supplies, and Miguel could charm donations out of anyone." Isabella laughed, the sound carrying the confidence of someone who had discovered her purpose. And was 5 years after that pivotal day at the community center. Nathan stood at the podium in the same room where his life had changed forever. But everything about the space was different now. What had once been a sterile meeting room with folding chairs and fluorescent lights had been transformed into the headquarters of the Rivers Family Resource Center, complete with comfortable seating areas, a children's play space, and walls, covered with photos of the hundreds of families who had found support within these walls. The occasion was the center's annual celebration dinner, an event that had grown from Margaret's backyard barbecue into a community-wide gathering that filled not just the main room, but the entire building. Local businesses donated food and services, families shared success stories, and everyone came together to celebrate the simple but revolutionary idea that no one should face crisis alone. But tonight was special for another reason. Tonight, Nathan and Isabella were announcing their decision to step back from day-to-day operations of the center to focus on an opportunity that would expand their impact far beyond their small Texas community. 5 years ago, Nathan began, his voice carrying easily through the crowded room, I came to this building thinking I was just picking up some donated furniture. I had no idea I was about to witness something that would change my understanding of family, community, and what it means to choose love over fear. In the front row, Diego and Miguel, now 6 years old, sat between Margaret and Mrs. Chen, their faces reflecting the confidence that came from growing up secure in the knowledge that they were cherished exactly as they were. Both boys had developed into remarkable little people. Diego, with his careful thoughtfulness and love of books. Miguel, with his infectious enthusiasm and natural leadership abilities. Behind them sat dozens of familiar faces, families who had found their way to stability through the programs Isabella had developed and Nathan had helped implement. Sarah and David Chen were there with their 4-year-old daughter Emma, both of them now volunteer coordinators for the new parent support program. Marcus Williams sat with his 3 teenagers, the single father who had arrived 2 years earlier, on the verge of losing custody and was now employed as the center's family advocate coordinator. When people ask me how this all started, Nathan continued, I tell them it began with a choice, not a complicated choice, not a carefully planned decision, but a simple choice to get involved instead of walking away. Isabella stood beside him, her hand resting on the speech she'd prepared, but hadn't yet given, waiting for Nathan to finish his part of their joint presentation. She looked radiant in a way that had nothing to do with the dress Margaret had insisted. She buy for the occasion and everything to do with the deep satisfaction that came from work that aligned with purpose. What we discovered, Nathan said, is that most people want to help. They want to be part of solutions. They just need someone to organize the helping, to connect the people who need support with the people who have something to offer. The idea for expanding beyond their local community had come from an unexpected source, Victoria Ashworth. 6 months earlier, she had appeared at the center during one of Isabella's evening workshops, not as an adversary, but as someone seeking to understand what had grown from the seeds of that confrontational day years before. I've been watching, Victoria had admitted during a private conversation with Nathan and Isabella after the workshop ended. Following your work, reading about your programs, I've come to realize that what I thought was protecting my family was actually perpetuating exactly the kind of isolation and fear that destroys families. The conversation that followed had been difficult, painful, and ultimately healing for all 3 of them. Victoria had spent the years since that community center confrontation dealing with her own losses and regrets, coming to understand that her nephew's death had been used as an excuse to avoid rather than embrace the messiness and vulnerability that came with real love. I can't undo what I did to you, she had told Isabella, but I can try to prevent other families from facing the same isolation and rejection that I created. The result was the Ashworth Foundation for Family Resilience, a non-profit organization with funding to establish family resource centers in communities across the country. Victoria's connections and resources, combined with the practical experience Nathan and Isabella had gained, created an opportunity to replicate their model on a scale they'd never imagined possible. "Which brings us to tonight's announcement," Nathan said, gesturing for Isabella to join him at the microphone. Isabella took a deep breath, looking out at the crowd of people who had become extended family over the past 5 years. "Next month, Nathan and I will be moving to Denver to establish the first satellite location of what we hope will become a national network of family resource centers." The announcement was met with a mixture of applause and groans of disappointment. These were people who had come to rely on Nathan and Isabella not just as program coordinators, but as friends, mentors, and advocates. "But," Isabella continued, raising her hand for quiet, "we're not disappearing, we're expanding, and most importantly, we're leaving this center in the hands of people who understand its mission because they've lived it themselves." Margaret stood up from her front row seat, her face glowing with pride and excitement. At 72, she had officially retired from nursing, but had thrown herself into the work of the resource center with the energy of someone who had found her true calling later in life. "Margaret will continue as executive director," Isabella announced, "supported by a board that includes many of you and a staff of people who started as clients and have become community leaders." Nathan stepped back to the microphone for the final part of their presentation. "What we've learned over these 5 years is that the most powerful help comes from people who understand struggle firsthand. Every program we've developed, every service we offer was created by people who needed that kind of support themselves." He paused, looking around the room at faces that reflected every kind of family structure imaginable. Single parents, young couples, grandparents raising grandchildren, foster families, adoptive families, and families like his own that had been formed through choice rather than biology. "The traditional definition of family says that biology determines belonging," Nathan continued. "But we've discovered something different here. We've discovered that families are created by choice, sustained by commitment, and strengthened by community." Isabella took the microphone for their final comments. "5 years ago, I was 18 years old with 2 babies and nowhere to go. I thought my story was ending. Instead, it was just beginning, because someone chose to see possibility instead of problems." She looked directly at Nathan, then at Diego and Miguel, then back at the crowd. "Our boys will grow up understanding that families come in all configurations, that love isn't limited by legal definitions or biological connections, and that the most important thing you can do when someone needs help is to show up." As the formal presentation ended and the evening shifted into celebration, Nathan found himself surrounded by conversations with people whose lives had been changed by the simple decision to create community around mutual support rather than individual struggle. Later, after Diego and Miguel had finally been coaxed into the car, despite their protests that they weren't tired, Nathan and Isabella drove home through their neighborhood one last time as residents. "Any regrets?" Isabella asked as they passed the apartment complex where they'd first lived together. Nathan considered the question seriously. Their life was about to change dramatically again, trading the comfort of known routines and established relationships for the challenge and uncertainty of starting over in a new place. "No regrets," he said finally, "but a lot of gratitude." Inside their house, as they carried their sleeping sons to their beds, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had started as an impulsive decision to help a stranger had evolved into a life purpose that felt both challenging and deeply satisfying. Diego stirred as Nathan tucked him in, his eyes opening just enough to focus on his father's face. "Dad?" he whispered sleepily. "Yeah, buddy. Are we still going to be a family in the new place?" Nathan felt his throat tighten with overwhelming gratitude for a life he'd never planned but couldn't imagine living differently. "Always," he said, pressing a kiss to Diego's forehead. "We're always going to be a family." In the living room, Isabella was packing the last of their family photos into carefully labeled boxes. "They're really okay with all this," she said, not looking up from her work, moving, starting over, leaving everyone they know. "They trust us," Nathan replied, settling beside her. "They know that wherever we go together." Isabella looked up from the photos, her eyes bright with tears that weren't quite sadness and weren't quite joy, but something more complex and hopeful. "I love our life," she said simply. "I love what we've built, who we've become, what we're going to create next." Nathan pulled her close, surrounding himself with the familiar comfort of her presence, the steady heartbeat of the woman who had taught him that love was both stronger and more flexible than he'd ever imagined. Tomorrow, they would begin the process of moving toward their next adventure, carrying with them the lessons learned from transforming crisis into opportunity, isolation into community, and 3 separate wounded people into a family that had become so much more than the sum of its parts. Sometimes, Nathan thought, as he listened to the quiet sounds of his family settling into sleep around him, the most important decisions were the ones you made without knowing they were important. Sometimes the most powerful love stories began not with passion, but with simple human decency. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, a single moment of choosing to help someone else could become the foundation for a lifetime of purpose, love, and the kind of legacy that rippled outward through generations. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.